Some consultants will bring their price down. I feel like they're giving a discount, but. So it's, there's a lot of dynamics there, but. And the worst part is also we use, like, we use a strategic plan and then don't give all the legal guidance. You don't recognize, you've already got so much data, and this is on top of that, but we
Oh.
And I usually have a whole party in my house.
Oh, that's so sweet.
What are you talking about? You have 11.
But not everybody.
You've been here 40 years. How long have you been?
All right.
Good. Long time no see.
Yeah, seriously. Let me do cash. I feel like doing cash if you wouldn't mind.
Great.
Yeah.
I do not mind. Okay.
Very good. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and Gmar Chatima Tova. So I have a favorite little story, a midrash or a joke that I like to tell on Shabbat Shuvah. So 2 wilderness fishermen, determined and adventurous, hired a bush pilot to take them to a remote Alaskan lake. And after a week of fishing, the pilot returned to pick them up. But when they insisted on loading all their fish onto the already maxed out plane, the pilot hesitated. And still not wanting to be outdone, he gave in. And they strapped the fish to the pontoons, and the plane struggled to take off. Predictably, they crashed just minutes into the flight. And when the fishermen regained consciousness, the first one looked around at the scattered wreckage and asked, "Where are we?" And the other fisherman said, "About 50 yards from where we crashed last year." The message is clear. When we don't make the necessary changes, we find ourselves crashing into the same place, repeating the same mistakes. But Shabbat Shuvah, the high holidays, they offer us an opportunity to change our ways, to take all of the struggles that we have year after year, and to be able to make the changes that we know. And so tonight we open our hearts to the possibility of teshuvah, return and reflection and transformation. Let us not crash in the same place this year as we did last year. Let this Shabbat be the beginning of our turning, a time to shed old patterns and take off in new directions. And so we are going to begin our service with, you know what, Megan? I did not print out a list of the service. So where are we starting?
Okay. Maya Fehayom.
Maya Fehayom. We're starting with Maya Fehayom. Very good. Or you want to? Yeah, fine. So that can be found on page 10. Page 10.
All right. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Maya Fehayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Fehayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Fehayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Fehayom. Shabbat Shalom.
If ever there were people who brought light into our sanctuary, into our community, it would be Cantor and Elliot Berman. If you would like to come forward and light our Shabbat candles, and we will continue in our service on page 2. But let's read responsively on page 3. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו, וציוונו להדליק נר של שבת.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
It's amazing to think of the creativity of our ancestors and the mystics of old as they lived in Sfat in the north of Israel. They used to have a beautiful tradition of starting Shabbat at the bottom of the hillside. They would climb the snake path, and as they did, they would sing the Chadodi. And when they reached the top of the snake path, they would begin their Shabbat services in the Ha'ari synagogue. And though we are in Wisconsin, and there aren't too many mountains, it's helpful to think of that ascending as a spiritual ascent. And so, as we turn to the final verse of L'Chadodi, where it says, Boi kala, the last one, we're going to rise as we begin that verse, and we'll bow in the directions of the door, and then we'll turn back and face the sanctuary eastern wall.
L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamuyad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem tiferet v'litihla. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'lecha, ki hi mikor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maseh b'machashava tehila. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitorari v'ka oruvek, Kumi ori, uri shira beri, Kavod Adonai alayik nigla. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom aterad ba'ala, Gam b'simcha uv'sohola, Chokemune yom segula, Boi kala. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela.
I just want to welcome Megan once again to our Bima. It's such a joy to share in these beautiful holidays with you. And so we are going to read responsively on page 27. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night to renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, less routine set my ways. We turn back to page 26 for the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadol v'yikadosh Shemei Rabbah. Amen. V'amad v'rachirutei v'yamlik malchutei b'chayekon uvayomekon uvchayadecho beit Yisrael bagala uvizman kariv ve'imeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'amei olmaya yibarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ah v'yitramam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesho brichu la'elamin kol birchata v'shirata tush birchata v'nechemata damiran be'oma ve'imaru. Amen.
Entrances to holiness are everywhere, and the possibility of ascent is all the time. Even at unlikely times and through unlikely places, there is no place on earth without the presence. We rise now as we turn to the call to worship on page 28. We continue reading in the Hebrew on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem berakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tzevaot shamo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. And we continue reading responsively at the bottom of page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. We turn now to the watchword of our faith, the Shema, on page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu,
be seated. We continue with the Hafta on page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta ba'am b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot ayadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam b'amzazot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. We continue reading responsively at the top of page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together.
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osevele, malchutecha ra'uvanecha, bokeyayam livnei Moshe u'Miriam, zeli anu v'yameru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'emar ki fadash Adonai et Yaakov ug'alo miyad chazak mimenu baruch atah Adonai Ge'al Yisrael.
Amen. As we think about the miracles that occurred in our past as our ancestors celebrated on the shores of the sea, so too do we think of the trials and difficulties that confront us now. We think of our brothers and sisters in Israel. We think of our brothers and sisters who have been affected by the hurricane. We know that there are things that can change our lives in an instant and in a flash. So when we read the Hashkivenu prayer, it's a reminder that we, in a sense, all of us, they say that there are no atheists in foxholes, right? That each one of us needs that idea of something that is greater than ourselves, that is divine, to turn to in moments of distress. And we pray that there should be a shelter of peace over us and over all we love and over all the world. And so we read these words together at the top of page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. We continue now with the Vishamru on page 44.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדור תמבורית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תמבורית עולם. בני ובן בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תמבורית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תמבורית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תמבורית עולם.
It's beautiful reading on page 47. It reminds us that our future and our legacies, they are in our hands. Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits and God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but prayer can water an arid soul and mend a broken heart and rebuild a weakened will. We rise now as we turn to page 46, as we turn to the tefillah, to the Amidah, and also remembering, and speaking of the idea of remembrance on this Shabbat Shuvah, the insertions that you'll find in the midst of the Avot, the Ima'ot on page 48, as well as Gvurah, which can be found at the bottom of page 50.
Adonai tzifatai tivtak ufi yagita hilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagedol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei HaKol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, u'mevii geula livnei v'neihem, leman shomo be'ahava. Zokrenu l'chaim, melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chodvenu b'sefer ha'chaim, lemancha Elohim chaim. Melech ozer u'mashiach u'magen, Baruch Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Ata gibor leolam Adonai, Mechaye hakol ata, Rav lehoshia morid hatal. Mechaye chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech novlim berofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar. Michamocha bagavurot umidum elach, melech meimid umechaye umatzmicha Yeshua.
Mi chamocha av harachamim, zocher yitzurav lechayim berachamim, v'ne'eman ata lechayot hakol, baruch ata Adonai, mechaye hakol. Page 52, ata kadosh, v'shimcha kadosh, ukdoshim b'chol yom ya'alucha sela, baruch ata Adonai, hamelech hakadosh. And we continue now reading at the top of page 55. Let's read responsively. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat. We continue at the top of page 57, and you may be seated. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amacha Yisrael, utefilatam be'avad tekabel, utehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you. In this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, shotecha levadacha b'yira na'avod. And we also think with gratitude for all of the gifts that come our way. And on evenings such as this, we might feel grateful for the gift of a beautiful fall night, the sunset, and the reflection of the trees and the windows behind us. We might feel the gift of what it means to come together as a group, a community, in this quiet sanctuary all together and feel that peace that comes after a busy week. We might feel grateful for the gift of friendship that is bestowed upon our community in all its forms and all stretches out and throughout America and to the world. And so I invite you to read with me at the top of page 59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulcha na'eh lehodot. We turn now to prayer for peace, a prayer that we are so in need of today. That can be found on page 60 as we join together in the singing of Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Atahu melech adon lekol shalom ki atahu melech adon lekol לברך את עמך ישראל, ברכו את קודשו בשלומך. בספר חיים ברכה ושלום ובנעשה טובה, נזכה ונקדיב לבניך. אנחנו וכולם בית ישראל, לחיים טובים, לחיים טובים ושלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
Megan, I think I mentioned to you that Ben Steinberg, who was the composer of this piece, was the composer in residence at my congregation in Toronto. And I sang in his choir. But what I didn't mention to you is that when I used to sing this in his choir, that an 8-year-old me was the soprano. And I think it probably sounded exactly like you when I was 8. It was wonderful. Thank you. Takes me right back home. And so we are going to turn now to the Mishaberach as we think of dear members of our community who might be in need of healing. And it's appropriate that we should turn from that beautiful Shalom Rav as we think about the blessings of peace, but we also think of the blessing of wholeness. And these dear members of our community are in need of refuat nefesh and refuat haguf, in need of a healing of spirit and a healing of body. And particularly in our hearts and minds, we're thinking of Shendel Bat Frida Malka, Julie Borikoff, Carol Dubin, Steve Toplinsky, Esther Cohen, Hachazan Sar Rachel Yocheved Alexander, Avram Ben Naftali, Sophia Rubenstein, David Rotter, Keith Mandel, Isla Bat Natan Vashoshana, Mark Cook, Dr. Susie Mendelson, Michaela Hellenberg, Susan Garrison, Peter Rotter, Roger Cook, Neil Pinsky, Layla Rosen, David Kleinman, Wendy Schuster, Ann Becker, Kathy Baker, Diane Redman, Carolyn Newman, Devorah Leah, Kelly Adiniak, Ricky Spiegel, Carrie Rourke Trainer, Wendy Pollock, Terry Hammond, Eli Bensman, George Grimm, Patrick Heppy, Morgan Hughes, Simon Leo and Noah Michael, Claire Vivian Gaster, Sybil Savalsky, Bruce Sherman, Shalom Ben Lazar, Cy Cohen, Harav Anat Bat Margalit, Arlene Minkoff, Gary Elderbrook, Olivia Jane, Lee Smolton, and Jeff Berlin. If there are names that should be added to this list or names that should be pronounced differently than I did, I invite you to hold those names in your heart as we turn to these words of tradition. Baruch Atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim, Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzhak v'Yaakov Sariv Karachel Leah, Hu Yivorech et HaCholim, Im Refuat HaNefesh, Im Refuat HaGuf, B'toch Shar Cholei Yisrael, Bashta Bagala Uvizman Kariv and Omar, Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bring blessing and healing to all who suffer. May the Holy One, blessed be God, restore them to health and vigor, and let us say, Amen. We take a moment now of silent reflection, silent meditation, as we contemplate the prayers of our own hearts, Tfilat Halev.
יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך. אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי, וגואלי.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So I remember what it was like to live in Florida when hurricanes were coming through, and watching the news when we would see what was called the cone of uncertainty. Have you ever heard of the cone of uncertainty? It's where you're not entirely sure whether the hurricane is going to swing to the left or to the right, whether it's going to pass us by or whether it's going to hit where we are. And that uncertainty, that wait for the storm, was always pretty difficult. We would have to prepare. We had to figure out what we would do with the car if it was flooded. We'd have to figure out how we could survive without electricity. We picked up some tricks along the way. We knew that the congregation, the synagogue there, had an ice machine, so we would fill a cooler with ice and then hope for the best. It's not easy. And certainly when we see what is happening on the east coast of the United States, where more than 213 people have lost their lives and hundreds more are still unaccounted for, entire communities from Florida to Virginia have been devastated, and homes have been swept away, and families have been torn apart. And we hear stories of people searching for their loved ones, and the volunteers delivering supplies by mule and air to places still cut off from the world. It's tragic. It's hard to hear these stories. And the damage from Helene is overwhelming. In some places, there are families entering the second week without power, and bridges and roads have been washed away. And for many, life will never return to what it was before the storm. And in the face of destruction like that, we're reminded of how fragile life can be. And Helene reminds us of the uncertainty that we live with every day, the reality that no matter how much we prepare, we can't always predict or prevent every storm. But the storms that we prepare for aren't always the ones we see on the news. There aren't always hurricanes that sweep across states or countries, and many of the most powerful storms in our lives are personal. Crises that blow in unexpectedly and disrupt our lives and shake us to our core. These storms, they can come from illness or the death of a loved one, or the loss of a job, or a painful family conflict. And sometimes we can see the storms coming, like a hurricane on the horizon, and we have time to prepare. And other times they hit us suddenly, like lightning strike, and leave us scrambling to recover. As we gather on Shabbat Shuvah, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're called to reflect on personal storms. During this time of year, we recite the haunting words of the Unatana Tokef: who will live, who will die? Who by fire, who by water, who by sword, who by beast, who by famine, who by thirst. These words are always sobering, remind us of life's unpredictability and fragility. None of us know what the coming year will bring or what personal storms may be waiting just over the horizon. But Shabbat Shuvah is a time to ask ourselves, in a sense, how do we prepare for the storms of life? How do we respond when the winds of uncertainty blow through our lives? When we find ourselves facing situations we never imagined. And those situations come no matter what. In the Torah, there's a story about how our ancestors responded to their own storm, the one that was both physical and spiritual. After leaving Egypt, the Israelites wandered through the desert for 3 days without water, and they were thirsty and desperate and beginning to panic. And finally, they came to an oasis, but when they tasted the waters, they found it was bitter and undrinkable. They named the place Marah, which means bitter, and began to complain to Moses. Can you imagine what it must have been like to travel with water for 3 days and then finally come to what you think is going to be your salvation and take a drink and it's salt water? So in response, Moses turned to God for help, and God showed Moses a particular tree. And when Moses threw the tree into the water became sweet, and the Israelites drank, and their thirst was quenched, and they were able to continue their journey. Now, at first glance, this story seems like a miracle, a simple miracle, a divine intervention in a moment of crisis. But there's a deeper lesson here. The Torah tells us that God didn't just show Moses a tree. The Hebrew text uses the word vayorehu. God taught him a tree, which is very strange. And the rabbis of our tradition interpret this to mean that the tree wasn't just a physical object, it was a symbol, it was a teaching. And according to the rabbis, the tree is the Torah, the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. The Torah is what helped us transform life's bitter moments into sweetness, just as the tree made the bitter waters drinkable. Torah helps us navigate the difficult and bitter times in our lives. It provides us with a path forward, a way to make meaning out of our suffering and to find sweetness even when life feels overwhelming. But the Torah isn't just a collection of laws and stories, and it's far more than that. Torah is a guide for how to live a life of meaning, compassion, and resilience, and it reminds us that while we cannot prevent the storms of life, we can choose how we respond to them. By living according to the teachings of Torah, we find strength and clarity to weather whatever challenges come our way. But Torah alone, I don't believe, is enough. We also need community, people to lean on, to hold us up when we feel like we're about to fall. And this lesson, too, is found in nature. After Hurricane Katrina, I love this story, officials in New Orleans noticed something remarkable about the city's oak trees. Despite the ferocity of the storm, only a handful of the 700 oak trees on St. Charles Avenue were uprooted. And the reason was interconnected roots. Beneath the surface, the roots of each tree were intertwined with the roots of the trees next to them. So when the hurricane came, these trees didn't stand alone. They held each other up, sharing the burden of the storm. This is what community means. We're like the oak trees with our roots intertwined. And when life's storms come, whether they are hurricanes or personal tragedies, we don't face them alone. We hold each other up. Our roots run deep, and they connect us to one another. Over the past year, many in our community have faced their own personal storms. Some have lost loved ones, others faced illness, financial difficulties. As a nation, we have weathered societal storms, division, unrest, ongoing struggle for justice. I heard an election is coming up. But through it all, I've seen this community come together, supporting one another and strengthening our bonds. Whether it's through Daily Minyan, where people gather to recite Kaddish and find comfort in numbers, or through our Kavod Committee, which provided meals and assistance to those in need, or through our volunteer efforts to help the most vulnerable in the wider community, like St. Ben's, we are bound together. We hold each other up, just like the oak trees in New Orleans. So as we stand here on Shabbat Shuvah, we're called to reflect on the storms we've weathered and the ones that may lie ahead. And to Shuvah, repentance, return, is not just about turning away from sin or mistakes. It's about returning to what matters most. It's about reconnecting with our deepest values, with Torah, with community, and with each other. And so just as we prepare for hurricanes by gathering supplies and making plans, we prepare for life's personal storms by turning toward Torah and toward community. The Unatana Tokef reminds us that we cannot predict the future. We don't know what this next year will bring, whether it will be one of joy or hardship or health or illness, but we do know that we're not alone. We have the tools to navigate whatever comes our way, and we have each other to lean on. The stories coming out of the recovery efforts after Hurricane Helene are a powerful reminder of the strength of community and the resilience of our human spirits. Neighbors are rescuing neighbors, volunteers are delivering supplies to isolated communities, and people are rebuilding their lives together. So as we prepare for Yom Kippur and continue reflecting on the year ahead, let's remember the lessons of the oak trees and the people recovering from Helene. Our strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together, from knowing that beneath the surface our roots are intertwined and we hold each other up. The storms will come as they always do, but together, grounded in Torah, supported by our community, we have the strength to endure, to rebuild, to return, and find sweetness even in the midst of life's bitterness. So Gemar Chatima Tova, everyone. May you be inscribed for a good and healthy year, and may we continue to stand together as a community that holds each other up. We are going to turn now in our Siddur to the Aleinu. And I wasn't kidding when I said, I'll just call anybody up. So come on up, anybody together, if you'd like to open up the Ark doors. Don't make me call out names, but come on up. Thank you. All right, if you've been a past president or a wonderful volunteer in our community, come on up and open up our Ark doors. Or a current president? Well, he's going to do the announcements in a minute.
Someone who plans to be a past president?
Yeah, that's right. Please rise as we turn to the Aleinu. The Aleinu can be found on page 282. That's 282.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, tegerula leotse breshit, sanu kikode haratzot, velo samanu kishmi brot hadama, sam chelkenu kahem, vigor aleinu kikohamona. Ve'anaknu korim, umishtagavim umodim, livnei melech, mahi hamlagim, hakadosh baruch hu. Ve'nema v'haya Adonai, lamelech kol haaretz, bayom Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova.
Good shots. A tradition you should never start with a total motion conference on Yom Kippur service at the end. They bring hundreds of people to stand for the last 20 minutes of the service.
Stand for all.
Please don't.
We won't do that. So please be seated. Our thoughts turn to our loved ones who have entered into eternity. Particularly in our hearts and minds, we are thinking of dear members of our congregation who have passed during the period of Shiva and Shloshim, as well as, I regret to announce, the passing of Irv Breslau, whose funeral will be on Monday at 1:30. So we think of Sarah Vida Berman, we think of past President Jackie Gilbert, and we think of Nancy Ketchpaw. In addition to those names, so too do we think of those for whom we mark their yahrzeit on this Shabbat. We think of Millie Acker, Paul Berg, Charlene Pass Blumenthal, Joseph Borns, James Buckbinder, Benjamin Davis, Genevieve Durzon, Ben Eisenberg, Bobby Fox, Hyman Friedman, John Garrett, Hadassah Goldberg, Alan H. Goldsmith, Jack Ranoff, Isidore Gratch, Evelyn Heller, Esther Joseph, Ruth Kaiser Kushner, Edith Kohler, Max Kolb, Eugene Kraus, James Paul Labotsky, Fanny Lukoff, Ruth Marks, Sidney K. Narad, Geraldine Netboy, Zachary Onicle, Ben Parks, Genevieve Schneider, Philip Sklar, Deborah Renee Solachek Napier, David Stern, Jacob Turer, Carol Ugent, Leonard Walkoff, Sylvia Cook Weber, Harry Whedon, Bertie Winnick, Marcia Yanoff, Evelyn Udovitz, Phoebe Zucker, Millie Acker, Paul Berg, Charlene Pass, Blumenthal, Joseph Borns, James Buckbinder, Benjamin Davis, Genevieve Durzon. Had a little deja vu there. We are going to turn now to the Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, which can be found on page 294. We rise together as a community, but if there are names that should be added to this list or names that should be pronounced differently, please do call those names out loud as I look in your direction. In addition to Jackie Gilbert, yes. In addition to the names of our loved ones, so too do we think of all those who've died due to war and or terrorism. We think of all those who've died due to the terrible viruses of racism and xenophobia. We think of all those who died in defense of this nation and allied nations' ideals. We also think of all those who perished during the Holocaust. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as we turn to words sanctified by memory, words glorified by hope. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shmei rabbah, b'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach leolam ulamei amaya. Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'itpa'ar v'tromam v'itnaseh. V'itadar v'italev v'italal shmei dekudisha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. It's a joy to call upon Steve Wallace, who's going to step up and give us the Congregation Shalom announcements. It's always wonderful being with you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Stop me if you've heard this before. Shabbat Shalom. We are participating in the 2024 High Holidays Food Drive for the Jewish Food Pantry this year. There are bags in Clearfield Hall, along with a list of items that we're requesting for the food drive. On October 7th, the Milwaukee Jewish Federation will mark 1 year since the Hamas launched the attacks on Israel. Please join Jewish Milwaukee for an evening of hope and unity as the community honors the resilience of our people. On October 8th, there will be a showing of the documentary film Screams Before Silence, a film on the sexual violence committed by Hamas on October 7th, 2023. This movie will be filmed at the Times Cinema on Vliet Street in Milwaukee at 7 o'clock p.m. Congregation Shalom is a sponsor of this event, a co-sponsor, and you can register by QR code on the flyer in Clearfield. Please join us Yom Kippur afternoon for 2 study sessions, where we will reflect on how arguments can actually help us reflect on the 1-year anniversary of the Israel-Hamas war. On October 16th, we have speaker Tal Schneider as our Erev Sukkot guest. Tal is a political and diplomatic correspondent for the Times of Israel, covering Israel's political arena. On October 31st, Congregation will hold its first debate between Rabbi David Saperstein and Dr. Tevi Troy. The debate subject will be it resolved that progressive and liberal values and policies better serve American Jewry and Israel than conservative values. This event is generously sponsored by the Einhorn family. On November 8th, we have the Sanford J. Ettinger Memorial Lecture with guest speaker Mordecai Lee, who's speaking during our Shabbat service. The event is graciously underwritten by the Sanford J. Ettinger Memorial Lecture Fund. On November 10th at 10 a.m. in the morning, Congregation Shalom's Voices for Justice Committee presents Food and Housing Insecurity in Our Community, a Jewish Perspective. This program will be a panel discussion featuring Sister Mackinnon Brown, Dan Fleischman, Heidi Gould, and moderated by Rabbi Abby Phelps. There will be a Q&A session following the discussion and a light nosh after. We still have space on the Adult Civil Rights Journey trip. That's traveling on April 23rd through the 27th next year. The trip is going to visit Memphis, Birmingham, Montgomery, Selma, and Atlanta to take a deep dive into the history of slavery, racism, and the civil rights movement. We are deeply grateful to Congregant Richard Edelman for loaning us his beautiful sculptures in PVAR Foyer. I hope you had a chance to enjoy them. They will be up through the days of awe. These pieces, along with the sculptures outside the temple, invite us to a realm of both contemplation and aspiration that seems to me especially compelling this season. Richard, we always thank you for your generosity in donating such beautiful art to Shalom. And thank you to the Zemmel family and the Rosenthal family for the remarkable loaning of the Sephardic Torah scrolls in the PVAR Foyer. When you think about how old these scrolls are, hundreds of years old, from Yemen and from Italy, and how they found their way out of the Middle East and Europe and found their way to Fox Point, Wisconsin, you appreciate the resiliency of the Jewish people, and it certainly gives me hope. We're stewards of these Torah scrolls, and we're excited to be the future home of many other ancient and contemporary artifacts that Rabbi Rosenthal collected with great care to instill an appreciation for the search for knowledge in future generations. We're proud that we too will carry on that legacy for Rabbi Frank and Harriet Rosenthal, and may their memories be for a blessing. We'll announce more information about this wonderful gift and its consequences coming up soon. On your way out of services tonight, please check the table at Klurfeld and in the foyer for announcements of all the events that I've just mentioned. And of course, watch your emails, Facebook, and the webpage for all Shalom happenings, including upcoming activities. We welcome you into temple leadership, those who have an interest, and wish you Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Steve. We'll sleep in December, I think, from all the things that are happening. So if you would please rise, we're going to turn to the Kiddush, and as we do, I just want to thank Paul for always uplifting us with his beautiful music, and I know it's been a lot of services over the past of these few weeks, and we are really very grateful for all that you bring to us. So let's turn to the Kiddush, which can be found on page 4. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim. We turn now to page 358. As we contemplate the concept of returning, we return to ourselves, we return to the best version of ourselves. So let's join together in singing Hashivenu.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'no shuva, V'no shuva, Kadesh, Kadesh, Yomenu Kedem. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'no shuva, V'no shuva, Kadesh, Kadesh, Yomenu Kedem.
Gemar Chatima Tova, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Flight back. I'll see you next week.
Where should I?
You can take that.
No. And then what should I do? Forgot to put my glasses on. I'll just leave it on the desk.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
It's perfect. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Travel safely. If anything comes up, I'm sure I'll call you at some point this week so I can just go. We've got over everything, right?
We did, but
Things will come up.
I know things will come up. I'll be working on the plane ride home.
Yeah. Well, you know what it reached me. You're amazing. It's like supernatural.
It's very, well, thank you. You're very generous, and I appreciate it. Thank you.